Today I'm going to do a deck tech of one of my favorite commanders. Not a commander that I play very often because the table doesn't necessarily like it. And it's not CDH or anything, but it's kind of fancy, and it's a Child of Alara. And I've had this one a long time, even before the commander rules changed, and you had to choose to put him in your graveyard. Now he can touch, blow up the board, and you can put him in the command zone. But I never really do that, because that's just not how this deck is designed. And so the main thing with Child of Alara is you're trying to play this guy and kill this guy over and over until people get sick of playing things and eventually crawl out a lands-based advantage win. And we'll go over some of the win cons I have in here, besides just attacking with this guy and people not having any resources left to deal with him. But the main thing is you need to be able to sacrifice this guy. So we've got a Life's Legacy. We can sacrifice the child and draw 6 cards. And it's nice that it's an additional cost. So you cast him, he resolves. They can't interact with the sweeper effect, even if they can interact with the card draw effect. So in specific, extra spicy, the Mind Extraction. You sacrifice the child, then they reveal their hand, and they discard every card that has at least one color. So not only have you destroyed the whole board, but you've completely wrecked somebody's hand. And then, so those are the 2 spells I have that we can sacrifice them with. And then obviously, we don't want to pay 5 mana for them all the time, so we're going to have a Reanimation suite. We play Reanimate, we play Life Death for the death side. It's like a slightly worse Reanimate. We play Animate Dead. This one's nice because it's an enchantment that Sun Titan can bring back. We have Sun Titan in this deck. We'll get back to that. We have a Shallow Grave. Brings back the top creature, so it's not always the child. But when it is the child, it also gives it haste. You have to exile at the end step with this one. But the cool part about it is it's an instant. So they can be like mid-combat, and you're like, hold up, let me bring back my Child of Alara, and then you find a way to sacrifice it to blow up the board. Then the most broken version of Shallow Grave, the Corpse Dance. It's the same thing, except you can buy back it at 5 mana. This card's really broken. I'm kind of surprised it's not banned in Recurring Nightmare is, but I guess Nightmare is a bigger, wider problem that everyone would want to play, and this is not so much. The graveyard order part's obnoxious, but it's just part of the game. And we've got a Footsteps of the Goryo. Return the creature, and then we sacrifice it at end of turn, which is exactly what we want to do anyway, so this card's awesome. And then we've got Makeshift Mannequin. This one returns the child at instant speed again, which is great. And if it becomes a target of anything, sacrifice it, which is super on plan. We just want to sacrifice the child. And then we've got Dread Return. This one's cool because it brings back the child, but also if we get 3 creatures in play, or even 2 creatures and a child, we can blow up the board while we're reanimating something else. So the flashback aspect of this is really nice. And then we have an Unburial Rites. Return the child, and this has flashback, so we can do it twice. So we're basically never playing commander tax, and a lot of times it's even discounted below the 5 mana. Those are all of our ways, at least spell-based ways, to reanimate the child. Then we'll get into some of our other creatures we can reanimate. Got an Elvish Reclaimer. This guy's super important because he grabs Cavern of Souls. A lot of people don't see that one coming. They're like, oh, child, that's obnoxious, but I'm just going to beat it on the stack. And this guy says no. But I've got a handful of other really spicy lands that the Reclaimer can get too. And we'll get more into that later. We've got a Priest of Fell Rites, another way to bring back the child. Also has Unearth. Costs a little bit of life, but it's pretty nice. Really good fit in here. We play Sun Titan, so this is really good for that. Got an Elvish Rejuvenator. We don't actually play hardly any basic lands in this deck, which is its main weakness. We do play one of each, so if someone plays Wave of Vitriol or something, we're not totally crushed. But anyway, this is like their best kind of explore creature because it can hit non-lands. So we're playing this guy, just kind of a jail card. We're playing a Disciple of Boss, can sacrifice a child, gain life, draw cards, super on plan. It's a nice creature to recur when the child's in play, and you just have all these reanimation effects. We've got a Genesis. As the game goes late, we want to loot the child. Easiest way to do that is just have a Genesis in your graveyard. You can pay 3, put the child back in your hand on your upkeep. This card's super grindy and great. It's a nice fit in here. Playing a River Kelpie. It's kind of unassuming, but whenever it or another permanent enters from the graveyard, you draw a card. It has Persist. Whenever a player casts a spell from a graveyard, and this is cool because it's just enters from anybody. Other people doing graveyard stuff. This card just draws tons of cards. It's really good in here. Then we've got a Sun Titan. Sun Titans has a handful of things like the Animate Dead that it can reanimate, but the best thing that Sun Titan can reanimate is actually lands. You can get extra land plays. And Sun Titan is just really nice, different piece of card we can reanimate. Another creature that's nice to sacrifice and loop all the time is a Kokosho. Most people, when they see a Kokosho, the table just groans. They're like, oh my goodness, this thing. But in my game, if I play Kokosho, they're like, oh, you're not going to play the child this turn? And like everyone like cheers. It's awesome. So they're already mad at you. You can't justify not playing this guy. The child destroys and does not exile, so a really unique and interesting piece of tech, the Luminant Primordial. It also targets for each opponent, so there's just a lot of value on this guy, and he gives your opponent's life, which you just do not care about because the game's going to go really late, and so he's really good in here. We got one more creature. Child of Alara blows up all the non-land permanents, so we got that creature who can exile creatures. Now we just need a way to actually blow up lands too. And this guy can be really gross if we reanimate him multiple times. And the cool thing is he's not only blowing up lands, he can blow up some other stuff. But when he blows up lands, he gives them elephants. And elephants are something that the child can blow up. So, it's also a 9/9. Terracodon's very good in this deck. Now we're going to go over some of our ramp package. We've got a Burgeoning, which is a permanent that can be blown up. But if this is in your opening hand, this deck has a high land count. We're not actually even sure how many lands, but I'll probably count it today while we're going through it. Whenever other people play lands, you can play lands. And then obviously if we're playing this one, we're probably also playing Exploration, which we are. These are the best 2 Explore cards that are permanents that I'm eventually going to blow up. It won't matter by the time I actually do that. We don't play Soul Ring or any mana rocks like that, for that matter, because they just don't make sense. So those are the 2 we get to play, the lands-based ramp spells. We play a Pernicious Deed. Sometimes you need to blow up the board before you really get your first child online. And sometimes they'll do a bunch of stuff and they'll finally be like, oh, exile your graveyard or this or that. You're certainly not going to blow stuff up now. And then you play this Pernicious Deed and you blow all their stuff up. So, and that's what this deck's trying to do, blow up permanents. And then obviously if we're playing Pernicious Deed, we are probably also playing the Veneral's Disc, which we are. So, and this one, also like the Deed, what's cool about this one is that it actually is pretty efficient. It gets to play pretty early. And then we have one other creature in here, but it's really just a sacrifice effect. This is the hardest sacrifice effect to interact with. It's not on the land, it's not on a permanent on the battlefield. A lot of people don't play cards like Pithing Needles. And then eventually it's a 9/7 with haste, so when it comes off suspend. And so sometimes that can be good too. And we're going to get into some of our card draw spells. We play Treasure Hunt, This card averages about 2 cards for 2 mana. Sometimes it's like 5. Sometimes it lets you overhand and then reanimate something like a Terrastodon on turn 3. It doesn't do that very often, but it is just one of the better draw spells for a land heavy deck. We play Winding Way. We say land every time. And what's cool about it is we have a lot of cards that like to hit our graveyard. So grabbing our lands, putting cards in our graveyard. And then if you noticed, if we're choosing land every time, this card is basically mulch. Yeah, we play mulch too. We have a land heavy deck. We are also playing Compulsive Research. Draw 3, discard 2, or discard a land. You can't actually discard 2 things that you want to reanimate. You probably never do that. You're probably more likely to be so good at drawing cards you just overhand those things. Go ahead and put some lands in your graveyard. It's good for Sun Titan. We play a Bring to Light. This can toolkit for a lot of our spells and our reanimation stuff. It's cool if you have 7 mana, you can Bring to Light and pay the buyback on Corpse Dance and then put it back in your hand. So it's good for that. But we actually have quite a handful of spells that do specific things. And Bring to Light is just kind of a well-rounded card at getting us out of problems. Because a child deck plays kind of like an arch enemy deck where people get after you. The child destroys everything, so naturally we need some cards to exile stuff. So we play Swords to Plowshares. Nice, efficient removal spell. And then Swords only hits creatures. We also play an Anguished Unmaking, because sometimes you're sitting down across from something like a Darksteel Forge. So you're going to need an answer to that. People like to counter the child or counter key pieces of spells. We do play a little bit of counter magic in here. We play Swan Song. This one's kind of a given because it gives him a bird, which will then just die. So it's basically penalty free. We really like Delay. Like counter spells good, but the ones that aren't double blue are a lot easier us to play. And then we're also playing a Negate. Those are my 3 counter spells I got in here. One of our favorite card advantage spells in this deck is Quiet Speculation. Search for 3 cards with flashback, put them in our graveyard. Now we're going to get into what the rest of the deck is, which is flashback spells. So then we'll go over the flashback toolkit. And what's really cool about these cards that are nigh unplayable most of the time is the matchups I'm bad at, the decks that are more CDH combo centric. A lot of these little cards we can grab actually are the proper interaction to make sure I can try and go long. So we got a Coffin Purge. We can eat a card in a graveyard. Naturally, other graveyard decks are going to do well with me putting everything in the graveyard all the time. We've got Ancient Grudge. Nice, efficient spot removal that I can play twice. We've got Ray of Revelation. The same thing, but for enchantments instead of artifacts. We can play some chump blockers in the early game. And then we can do that again. We can do that same thing with Call of the Herd. We can play Forbidden Alchemy. This one's great. Look at the top 4. Put 1 in your hand, 3 in the yard. We like putting cards in our graveyard. The flashback on this one's a little extra steep, but the 3 mana mode on this one is really, really good. A little bit of extra survival. We got a Lightning Helix. This card is actually really overperformed. It's a lot of creatures that you really want to kill that only have 3 toughness in the early game. And gaining the life is surprisingly good. And then the flashback is cool. And you can actually kill 6/6s with this at 6 mana, which is steep, but I mean, it's technically there, which is cool. And it's just 2 kill spells on 6 mana, so it's pretty good value. We play a Deep Analysis, so draw cards, and then a really efficient card draw from the yard. Paying 3 life and drawing 2 cards from your graveyard. Drawing 2 cards from your graveyard is essentially the same as drawing 3 cards, because if you had 0 cards in your hand, you go from 0 to 2. If you were drawing 2 cards, or if you had 1 card in your hand and you draw 2 from your yard, you go from 1 to 3. If you had 1 card in your hand and you played it to draw 2 cards, you're only going from 1 to 2. And so Draw 3 is a lot more value than draw 2. And then we have a Mystic Retrieval, so we can get back some of the spells. This one's pretty nice for Bring to Light, and some of the stuff that doesn't have flashback, some of the card draw, but it can grab other things too. It's just got a lot of value. And then we've got a Past in Flames, which is pretty cool. Late game, we got a lot of stuff we'd like to give flashback that isn't these spells, like in the reanimation type stuff. And the game can go real late, and we can put a lot of the lands in play. So we actually get a lot of mileage out of this card, even though we're not some goofy combo deck. Then we'll get into some of our ramp spells, crop rotation. This one's the best. We got a lot of cool lands we can toolkit for. So we really like crop rotation. We've got a Summer Bloom. This is basically our third exploration. We play a lot of lands in this deck. And we're also playing Explore. That's kind of our game plan. We're playing Farseek. We do have some lands with multiple land types in here. For my commander decks, because I play Pioneer and Modern as a deck building restriction, if it's Pioneer or Modern playable, I don't play it in my commander decks. So I don't have fetch lands and I don't have shock lands in any of my commander decks. But I do have some other things that are the extra land, or Triomes. I don't play any of the Triomes in my commander decks either. But I do have some other things that I can play, and we'll get into the lands pretty soon here. Then we have a Circuitous Route. It can grab 2 basics. I only play 1 of each basic, but it can also grab gate cards. And I don't know if you've ever seen Maze's End, and we're going to show it to you, but Maze's End's a brilliant way to win the game when you're really not attacking, and you're really just destroying everything, every turn, all the time. So we do play Maze's End in here, because his deck is dumb like that. And so Circuitous Route is a pretty great ramp spell. Can do a lot of fixing at the same time. We play a Splendid Reclamation. We return all lands from the graveyard to the battlefield tapped. This card can get us out of a pinch when we're playing against a deck that hates on our lands, because our lands are pretty vital. We don't use mana rocks, we don't use creatures, we really don't use anything. We just sit back and amass lands. And then there's other ways that lands might get looted or milled or whatever. And this card's got a high ceiling for that, just getting our lands back. So, card's good in here. Alright, that was the non-lands. I'm going to count the lands real quick. Alright, so I counted the lands. I got 46 lands in this deck, which, I don't know, it's about as many as I was expecting, give or take a few. We've got a Cavern of Souls, which we discussed. Choose a creature type. Make our avatar uncounterable. That's huge. Because that's probably the biggest way to do lots of really impede our game plan. We've got a Crozen Verge. Can search for a forest or a plains. Put them in tap. So this is kind of like a Myriad Landscape for a multicolored deck. Crozen Verge is really good at fixing our colors in this deck, because we play some lands that say forests and plains that can hit other colors. We've got a High Market. This is the best way to sack Child of Alara every turn, all the time. But then the second best way to sack Child all the time would actually be Diamond Valley, but I don't own one of those. Is Mirror in the Moaning Well. This one even gains more life, which sometimes can be really helpful. Another legendary land. We play Volrath Stronghold. This one's really beat up, so somebody altered it, but yeah, it's still cool, still real. As a cost, you can put a creature card from your graveyard on top of your library. So this is one of the ways to recur the child that's hard for most people to interact with. So Stronghold's a good card for here. We play Yavi Maya. Just helps all our lands hit green. This is one of our fixing. What's cool about this is we have a couple lands in here that don't tap for mana, and so Yavi Maya makes those lands even better. We play a Wasteland. I used to play Legacy, so for a while I had two play sets of Wastelands. But I don't have Legacy decks really built anymore, so we got a Wasteland in here. Non-lands are the things we can't destroy, so having a Wasteland is super handy. We play Dark Depths. Thespian Stage. This 2020 is flying and indestructible, and indestructible is really key because Child of Alara says destroy. So Dark Depths is actually a pretty good way for us to close the game. And then if you've never seen this combo, you play Dark Depths, it's got 10 ice counters on it. Then you play your Thespian Stage, you copy Dark Depths. The Thespian Stage will deal Dark Depths with 0 ice counters on it, so you don't have to do all the work paying the 30 mana. You just copy it, legend roll, this one dies, then you have a Dark Depths that state base says, I have no ice counters, and you get a 2020 flying indestructible. It's a pretty cool legacy play. Another card, and they play that in Legacy Lands. That's like the main thing. Another card they play in Legacy Lands, mine is Italian, but this is a Tabernacle of the Pendrell Vale, which does in fact make this commander deck my most expensive by a really large margin. I've been playing for a long time. I bought this Tabernacle for about $600, probably 10 years ago. I don't even know what they're worth now. A lot of reserve list cards have fluctuated a bunch. I had an English one once upon a time, and then I went to GP Oakland, and the ATM wouldn't let me draw out enough cash to buy 2 Volcanic Islands, so I sold my Tabernacle for credit, and I got 2 Volcanic Islands and a Caracas, and oh my god, what a bad trade. Wish I still had the English one. But these things happen, and I'm not about to go buy one now. They're expensive. We play Mazes End, can grab a gate. If we have 10 gates with different lanes, win the game. It's really cheeky. It's good though. And yeah, so we play Mazes End, and then I'm not playing any of the choose a color gates because I just don't like them. They're obnoxious. I don't want to write on slips of paper, so I'm not playing a lot of the Baldur's Gate ones. I'm just playing the 10 Ravnica ones plus Gateway Plaza, so I got kind of a flex one if one of them ends up in my graveyard somehow. And then I don't win every game with Mazes End, but it's an option sometimes. And sometimes they go out of their way, focus on it, kill a gate, and that's not a bad thing. Alright, now, as we've heard, I used to play Legacy, so we got a Taiga in here, we got a Tundra in here, we got a Savannah in here, we got a Tropical Island in here, we got a Plateau in here, we got a Bayou in here, we got a Badlands, and we got an Underground Sea. And my commander decks don't share, and Child of Alara is pretty high on the list, unlike the hierarchy of who gets what. But there's no Scrubland and there's no Volcanic Island, and that has to do with some of my higher priority commander decks eating those up. So, but we do have a bunch of dual lands. These are really good for the Farseek. They're really good for the Crows and Verge. You know, you can be like, oh, grab a green land and a white land, and then you've already branched out into like 4 colors. So yeah, we play a bunch of old duels, which is like the other reason this is easily my most expensive commander deck. And we've got a Temple Garden, because I have like 5 or 6 of these. I'm not even sure how many, because normally my Pioneer modern rules would keep me from playing a shock land, but I've got an extra one, so just lives in here. We got a command tower, no brainer, it's just color fixing. We got an exotic orchard, same kind of thing, just kind of color fixing. We're playing a couple pain lands because I had them laying around, and then like green's the important color, and then black and white, those are probably the next most important colors. Actually, blue would probably be the next most, but I don't have an extra Yavimaya, so not in here. And then we've got all those duels, so some multicolor lands that enter untapped. We're playing a handful of these, I think they call them the check lands. We're just kind of filling out our mana base with lands we can play that are untapped, because we have a bunch of gates that enter tapped. And these do a really good job of entering untapped. It's very rare that I run into a game where I have to play these tapped, unless it's like turn 1, and that's pretty fine. Would they be better as other lands? Probably, but... And then we've got our 5 basics. And that's my Child of Alara deck. And it's super fun. It's super mean, but that's part of the fun. It's not actually that great at winning. Usually turns the game into an arch enemy game, but that's kind of fun in its own right too. So let me know what you think of it in the comments, and if you want to see a different commander deck, or you just, so I have them power ranked. This one's ranked 9th out of 36. So if you wanted to see one that's a lot worse or a lot better, just let me know in the comments, and eventually I'll do a deck tech of a different one. Yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.